is there a limit or a barrier to the maximum amount of innovation, right? Or are we plateauing in innovation? And the reason I bring that up, right, is because you think about all the innovations within the beginning of the information age, essentially, right? That how much the internet has exploded. You know, the internet is in your pocket now, and you know, you're able to take high resolution photos the same quality of a DSLR essentially through your phone. What's next essentially for technology? Because and even if what is next for technology is AI, for example, which that's what all the directions are pointing to, it almost makes me wonder, like, at what point is technology essentially going to plateau, if that makes sense?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways it already has. This is a really interesting question because I think you could look at it from two angles, right? So on one hand, you have like these technological leaps, right? So you have the internet, that started in like the 80s and 90s, got commercialized throughout the 90s. Social media popped in like the early 2000s, and now it's like the technology isn't changing. It's just more and more methods of commercialization to solve like very specific and more specific problems for various markets, right? And I think we see that with basically every technological leap. We're seeing that now with AI, where 10 years ago, like we had a lot of very solid, like broad AI tech, but it wasn't commercialized. And only in the last like 2 years have we seen ChatGPT, and now you see like tons of use cases popping up for very specific niches, all using the same underlying technology. And that's not to say that there isn't like a very long way to go on like the AI front as well, right? But it sort of follows the same pattern where there's the leap, the step, and then there's this iteration that happens over the course of many years. And I feel like that iterative process is happening faster and faster and faster now. So once the leap happens, you're basically commercializing that tech within 5 years because of the scale at which you're able to distribute any new development or any new business that you have worldwide. I think what's really interesting now is that people are seeing this new technology and realizing that even though we're able to iterate at the scale or at scales that like we were never able to iterate at before, and like distribute this technology to more and more people at a speed that we weren't able to before, the problems that they're solving are not fundamental to survival as humans, right? Like electricity was a very different technological leap than AI, right? Like we could all live without AI. Even if it's making our lives like significantly easier right now, it's really just like introducing more leisure and removing like more necessity for work. But with like electricity, for example, you could argue that people were obviously living before electricity, but it is leaps and bounds creating like more of a, what is the word I'm looking for? Like a wedge in our lives in the necessity that it brings, right? So I think that's really this like question of like, is technology accelerating, or is technology like, is progress still being made? Yes, progress is still being made, but we've reached this plateau of like necessity. If all technological development stopped tomorrow, obviously that would have downstream effects on the economy and things would get really bad. But like in theory, everybody would be fine, right? Like we have enough here to like live very happy lives and lifespans and healthcare and all those things pretty easy.
Right, because right now the most commercialized form of technology is phones, iPhone, Android, whatever the phone is. And it seems that each year the iPhone comes out. In the beginning of the iPhone, it's, there were so many revolutionary additions. You had Siri, you had Touch ID, you had Face ID, you had all these, wow, this is crazy innovation. And then now it seems like every year it's better battery, better camera, Papa John's. Like it's just that's it. That's all they got. So it almost makes me wonder that, okay, maybe the phone has reached its limitation of, or is slowly reaching that limit, and then that's maybe why Apple and all these other companies are moving more towards AI or moving more towards virtual and augmented reality. And that's why there's this huge push on why Apple's pouring so much money into this Vision Pro, hoping that it succeeds.
And I think there's a big question there is like, so there's this philosophy in Silicon Valley that's become popularized called like effective accelerationism or accelerationism, basically the argument that like any technological progress is good progress, and like even if some of the things that we end up building are bad, we should just like progress as quickly as possible, and on net that will benefit humanity, right? And I think I personally disagree with that, because we are now at a point where maybe 200 years ago that philosophy like was effective, but now because of the nature of the technology that we're building, it is not just like assumed that all technological progress is good, right?
Right. Like they're just doing it for shits and giggles now.
They're just doing it for shits and giggles, and they're doing it because like the business models of like the financiers in America rely on that, right? Like you need the new paradigm to come in so all the VCs can spill money into it and like they can get their fees and like the cycle continues, right? And that's why every year you seem to see like a new like thesis that like is buzzing that year, and all these companies pop up and 99% of them all end up failing. Like it's because the venture capital community and the investment community more broadly needs a new narrative to invest in, or else their business models don't make sense, right? So I think we're now at this point where we need to think a little bit more critically about like, okay, what is it that we should be building and why? A really good example of this is, I think the guy's name is Brian Johnson, but he's this like tech billionaire that has now dedicated his entire life to like
longevity
guy.
Okay, yes.
But like it's weird, right? Like the guy's doing everything from putting like scans on his penis to like, you know, trying to figure out what the best combination of food every day is to eat. Like he's no longer living a life for the sake of happiness or like goodness. He's living a life just to see how long he can make it last, right? And you could argue that he's making the sacrifice so that like a lot of these discoveries can be commercialized so that you and I could live longer. Right. And then the question is like, if the average American lifespan is 75 years, you know, maybe we want to bump it up to 80 or 85 or even 90. But like, should our goal be 200 years of living? Like, maybe not, right?
I think it just depends on, is your quality of life still going to be good at that point? Because there's some people who, even in their 60s, their health just deteriorates and dwindles so much that I don't want to say it's like, what's the point of living? But it's just, there's people who are in their 70s and 80s who their health outcomes are just way better than people in their 60s and 50s, because they've had the proper nourishment, they've had the proper exercise, they've done all the things right in order to, you know, not just have longevity of life, but longevity of the quality. But my issue with Brian Johnson is I saw his routine. One day I just stumbled upon his video. I think he's like a co-founder of Venmo or a co-founder
something like that. Some Venmo adjacent company.
Yeah. So I saw his routine, and he just wakes up at 4 or 5 in the morning every day, and that's already a no for me, right? And then he shines this light on his face for 30 minutes, and then he has like 40 pills in the morning that all have different vitamins. And I'm just like, bro, at what point do you argue that, hey, maybe my actual health or my standard of quality of life in terms of health is better, but are you actually enjoying your life? Maybe you have the energy, and maybe you have the ability to, I guess maybe you're 80 years old and still able to run like a 50-year-old. But at that point, it's like, if you're sacrificing so much of what there is in life in terms of, you know, just eating a simple meal that you enjoy. Maybe he enjoys it, who knows? But for me, I see his diet and I'm like, bro, come on. This can't be it. This can't be it. But for him, it seems like he's dedicated to it.
I think, again, like he's making the argument that he's, you know, toughened through it because each of these discoveries could then be, you know, productized, and then you won't have to go through all of the struggles that he's going through to figure out what the ideal, you know, combination of supplements and food and protocols is for the day. You could just do what he discovered was best, right? I still would argue that's unnecessary to the 10th degree.
He's dying for all our sins.
Yeah, he's Brian Jesus.
Basically.
But yeah, I think there is this really weird push towards just like, we should progress everything. And there are very few people that are sitting down and saying like, why are we doing this, right? And again, there's different question of, so you see like what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but there's like a smaller version of this happening in AI right now, right? Where you have like the AI accelerationists who are just like, we need to reach artificial general intelligence as quickly as possible. We don't care if it's going to end the world. Like, we just need to like get there, right? And then there's some people that are like the AI safety people that are like, whoa, 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 slow down. We shouldn't even be writing one more line of code until we figure out what is going on here. And then there's a lot of gradients in the middle, right? And I don't think we should all be, AI safety doomers who are like, we shouldn't do anything until we figure out exactly what's going on. But we probably shouldn't be on the complete opposite end of the spectrum either. And there's very little, moderate discussion as to what is the best way that we can continue to move forward while still doing so intelligently. And I think the incentives just aren't lined up for anybody to be thinking that way.